The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, 2025. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And Matt, I thought we'd do something a little different today than usual. Did a Q&A with the fans over the weekend. A lot of really interesting subjects came up, as they always do. So I thought we would touch on some of them and talk about them on this show. But first, I thought let's talk a little bit about Miami baseball, the great resurgence of Hurricane baseball, and how they've really turned it around here in the middle of the season, and look like they can be a contender in the ACC. You followed it quite a bit. You're a baseball coach. You played baseball. You are the president of the J.D. Arteaga fan club. Talk to us for a minute. Is this resurgence of Miami baseball real, in your opinion, or is it a tease here in the middle of the season that's going to leave Canes fans up in arms at the end of the day?
I mean, if you believe the ACC is a decent baseball conference, then yeah, it's real. This is a team that, and you got to give credit where credit's due. You know, I'll call people out all day long for what I see as failings, and also give praise where it's due as well. This is a team that was completely reshaped to start the season, and I literally had people close to the program tell me it was going to be a disaster. Last year was the first losing record at Miami since 1957, when Gary was 42 years old. So it had been a long time to have that kind of failure. And to rebuild a roster with a lot of guys who really weren't household names. The only guy they spent real money on was Daniel Cuvée, which obviously they had to do. And he got off to a slow start for him, right? And now he's really rounding into shape. But these other guys were community college guys. They're relying on 2 true freshmen starting pitchers. You know, that's a little bit unheard of at Miami, right? And credit to JD for sort of figuring it out along the way. Like, you know, maybe he should have realized earlier that they were the best pitchers, but whatever. Like, they're freshmen, right? So you have to sort of bring them along slowly. You can't just throw them out there. So the fact that Miami's gotten to this point from where they were, and they had a 3-8 ACC record in their first 11 games, right? And right now, after winning 2 out of 2, because the third game was canceled over the weekend due to weather, they went from 3-8 to 14-9 in the conference, which by my poor math means they've won 11 in the last 12 in the conference, unless I'm missing something. And that's really, really impressive because of where they were last year, because they totally rebuilt the roster. And to me, it's a sign of sort of what we want the Miami football program to do, right? Find guys who maybe, you know, the Jake Ogdens of the world, right? Who were good at UNC Greensboro or Asheville, wherever, one of the UNCs, not the real UNC, but not the real UNC, right? Find these guys who didn't have a lot of power, hit 320, but you can see on their film when you hire good assistants like JD has done, that they have the requisite skills to do what you need them to do at the University of Miami, right? The fielding was atrocious last year. Now the fielding's better, right? There's not as many mistakes as there were earlier in the season. The team's getting better and better as the year goes on. That's good coaching. Like, by definition, that's good coaching. Players playing together like they are on a team like this that's just been sort of thrust together, that's good evaluation, right? When you have poor evaluation, you have poor performance. So everything right now that we're seeing in baseball, as bad as it was last year, which was JD's first year taking over a program that was already in trouble, right, to where it is now, that's what we want football to do. Because unfortunately for baseball fans, this is not a baseball school. It's football first, basketball 8th, and baseball 24th or something like that. You know, like,
That's only because they haven't been winning. Baseball.
People right now, I guarantee you there will be comments on our messages. Why are you talking about baseball? Nobody cares. That's what happens every time we talk about baseball. And there are some passionate baseball fans. But for every 10,000, this is not an exaggeration, for every 10,000 football fans, there's one passionate baseball fan. And that's
we're not going to go on about it, but they deserve us to discuss.
So I just want to give credit where credit's due. I mean, fantastic job of making this team relevant after they could have folded. You see so many times at Miami where a program starts that badly and they're pointing fingers and they're arguing, and the coach, people were saying JD should be fired middle of the season. To have it come together the way it has, despite all that outside noise, all I want in the world is to have that happen in football, because that's what the fans care about. Unfortunately, for it to happen in baseball or women's tennis or golf, like, fans don't appreciate it as much. But this is when you see good coaching, good evaluations, creating the correct lineups, right? They're using the cleanup hitter at the number 2 spot, like stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense, but makes sense for this team. JD is pushing all the right buttons right now, and they just beat a top 20 team in the country convincingly on Saturday, beat him on Friday night. The pitching's been good. The defense has been good. They found a closer. Like, he's moved all the pieces in the right directions throughout the entire season and just ignored everyone who said he should be fired. And kudos to him. Now let's see it happen in football. Let's see the evaluation. Let's see the correct buttons being pushed. Let's see the pieces being put in place that maybe fans are like, this makes no sense. And then 3 weeks later, like, genius. What a great idea, Let's see that happen in football. This is what I want to see for every sport at Miami. And JD, congrats to him, man. He's laid down a blueprint for this program that shows you don't have to have superstars all over the field, You can do it with guys that just play together, that are a good bunch of guys that play their hearts out and have fun. And that's the bottom line, and they're doing that right now, and it's exciting.
All right, so we've pretty much hit the statute of limitations on baseball. Okay, we don't want to lose our viewers. I agree with you, but just very quickly. So in Matt Shodell's mind, this is real. This team is legit headed to the postseason.
Yes, they will be. Certainly, they'll be a regional team. There's not even that many games left. They have 2 series left against Virginia and Notre Dame.
I mean, they are a legit competitor in the postseason.
Oh well, okay. It depends on how screwed they get by the NCAA, because it's still not. When you look at talent top to bottom, they are maximizing their talent, which is what you want. But their talent top to bottom still isn't as good as top 10 teams in the country, top 16 teams in the country, right? So when they go to one of these regionals against a super regional team, there's going to be a discrepancy in talent. It just is the way it is. You got 2 freshman pitchers. They're not going to be, I can't imagine, a home selection for the first round, for regionals. Or super regionals, probably, for that matter. So, and super regional depends if somebody loses, but I still don't, maybe a 2 seed, most likely a 3 seed. What are they sitting at right now? They're it depends how the rest of the season plays out. But I mean, they have 9 losses. They're 14-9 in the conference, 29-18 overall. They should be ranked, but they haven't been ranked. So they have a little bit of a tough road in regionals. Now, if they can win the vast majority of the rest of their games, maybe win the ACC tournament or at least get into that final game or something like that in the ACC tournament, play really well. Now you're in the conversation that, hey, maybe this is a national seed type team, not in terms of being the number 1 seed in regions. They've already lost a lot of games, but in terms of getting to Omaha, being an upset 2 seed that actually wins and reaches Omaha. I could see that at that point. What you don't want to have happen is hit your stride at the wrong point, right? Like, we don't want this to be the best they're going to be, right? That happens sometimes where you win 11 out of 13, 13 out of 15, and then you lose 3 out of 5 heading into the ACC tournament. And it's just like you sort of lost that mojo in what happened. And this pitcher's all of a sudden sort of not throwing strikes and hitting his spots. And this, Daniel Cavay's gotten cold again or whatever it is. That's what can't happen, right? So baseball's a weird game in that sense. So it's so hard to predict. Like you said, I've coached baseball. I've played baseball in college. Like, I know how it goes. And to sit here and say that they're as talented as any team in the country, no, they're not even close. But they have a chance if they're playing their best baseball, playing like a team, not making mistakes. You can eke out a 3-2 win against the top team in the country, right? So, that's why when you make this, anything could happen.
Let's sum it up this way. Matt Shodell has withdrawn his name from consideration to replace J.D. Arteaga as baseball coach at Miami. I think J.D., regardless of what happens here moving forward and in the postseason, has pretty much warded off any conversation about his job security moving forward. I don't think there's any question about that. Yeah. All right. We went on way too long. We know. Thank you for sticking with us, those of you that are still here. We are going to get back to football now. Matt, like I mentioned, Q&A with the fans over the weekend. Lots of good subjects came up. I want to bring up some of them for discussion here on the show today. Starting out with the player most intriguing from the haul that Miami has made to this point from the transfer portal. Let's limit it to the spring. I mean, obviously Carson Beck, and we're going to stay away from that. Let's talk about the spring. My vote, without question, to me, goes to Keelan Marion, the kick returner, wide receiver. Miami needed more pieces at receiver. They got him. They got Tony Johnson. These guys aren't program changers. They're depth fillers, no argument. They did not find in the portal that alpha number one dude that just changes the perspective of the program going into the season. But the reason I like Marion, Matt, is Miami has not had a good kick returner in a while. And that is an element of the game that has been in neglect. They're not getting alpha plays from the kicking game. I think this guy, when he gets the opportunities, because they're not that numerous in college football anymore, but when he gets the opportunities, I think this guy has a chance to change that and be a little bit better at returning kicks than what Miami's had in the past. So I love this pickup. My close second, I would have to say, would be the linebacker Kamal Bonner, because he will compete to start at a position where Miami is a little bit shaky. Matt, your thoughts?
I have hope that some things will work out well. It's so hard to sit here and say, oh my gosh, Keelan Marion's gonna be returning kicks for touchdowns, and be a explosive receiver. He's never had, I don't think, 500 yards in a season. And yeah, he had a couple of really long kick returns at BYU, but those also skewed his overall stats of kick returns, right? Like, it's sort of like what happened with Jordan Lyle last year. Jordan Lyle runs a 90-whatever yard touchdown, and he averages 7.4 yards a carry, which is great, but everyone says 7.4 yards a carry, what a season. He had not that many carries. When you have a 90-yard carry in there, if take that away, and I don't know what he's actually going to average, but 5.8, whatever it is, it's still good, but it's not 7.4, right? And if you take away, not that you should, but you take away two busts by kickoff, coverage teams where the guy has a 100-yard kickoff return and a 96-yard kickoff return, you take those away, and he's like an average kickoff returner stat-wise. He's first team as a returner because he did return those, right? So all I'm trying to say is I don't know. He's at BYU. They played some decent teams. But Miami's a different animal. And again, as I watch his film, as I look at his stats, and he's been in college for a while, this isn't just like he's a second-year guy and he had 440 yards last year. He's been around for 4 years in college, right? He's never had 500-yard season. And people, I know they get excited when Miami signs anybody. I get it. Bert Auburn's going to hit every single kick, even though he missed half his kicks last year. I get it, okay? But when I
say he's the most impactful.
Yeah, and I don't like watching highlights. I hate highlights. I like watching games to watch guys, and it's just so hard to find the film on these guys like Marion, but the full film. But I saw with my own eyes what Malachi Toney can do, and maybe this guy will come in and I'll be like, wow, he's so much better than Malachi Toney. But I haven't seen a guy that looks as good as Malachi Toney since Roscoe Parrish. And Roscoe Parrish was a great returner and a great receiver. And Malachi Toney, just because he's a freshman, just because Miami had to get two receivers in the portal, or felt they had to get two receivers in the portal, and didn't get the guys they wanted in the first portal window, there was, I think, 4 slot guys they brought in for visits, and they didn't get any of them. The main guy they tried to get the second portal window, Pena, they didn't get him. And so it's a fact that they settled. They took 2 guys who can play slot, him and Tony Johnson, right? They both can play slot. I think Toney was what 70% in the slot, and Marion was, I think, 30%, 40% in the slot, something like that. But I don't want them to do what happened to Isaiah Horton last year. I don't want them taking Toney off the field. I don't want them taking JoJo Trader off the field. And we didn't see enough of C.J. Daniels, but if C.J. Daniels is as good as he was at Liberty 2 years ago, and if people are right that his foot injury is the only reason he wasn't a star at LSU last year and had no touchdowns, and if he's that good, who are you taking the reps away from? I don't want the J.D. Arteaga syndrome where it's like the opposite of what Arteaga's doing, and you're playing the wrong guys and you never push the right button, which to me, having watched spring practice, you cannot take Malachi Toney off the field. That guy should be on the field all the time. JoJo Trader should be on the field all the time. Those guys are stars. I know no one's heard of them outside of Miami fans, okay? But Gary's watched a lot of practice in the past 500 years. I've watched practice the last 30 years. I'm telling you, those two guys are stars. I look at the film of this Marion guy and this Johnson guy, and I'm like, okay, those are highlights, great. I need to see more of them to say, oh, they're stars, but their 4-year production has not said to me they're stars. So I just hope they push the right buttons. I have no problem taking 50 receivers. You got 105 guys. What I don't want to do is have Mario sit in this pattern of playing the older guys just because they're older, when you have better talent at freshmen, true freshmen. Like I want to see those guys. I want the better talent. That's all.
I think they'll be complementary players, and I think that's okay. Like, they needed more at wide receiver. They didn't have enough depth. At one point, Nikar had left. He's now returned, but they backfilled and replaced him and then let him back just because the depth at receivers is so light. And, Nikar's a decent player. He's just not a first teamer right now. So now all of a sudden with him coming back and the guys they picked up, they're in much better shape at receiver depth wise. I still think they're lacking that number one alpha dude. Maybe Tony evolves as that. Is that realistic as a true freshman? Not so sure. I love what I see of Josh Moore. Maybe he eventually becomes that guy. I don't know that we'll see it as a true freshman, but at least they have a lot of serviceable guys at wide receiver, and that's why I felt like his pickup was impactful. Now, Bonner, Matt, kind of, he's a linebacker. You don't really tend to think about him first, but this could, if he pans out, could turn out to be a very consequential pickup. I was asked, do we view Bonner as a starter right now for the Miami Hurricanes, ahead of Popo Aguirre, possibly, ahead of the young guys, Pruitt, C.J. Pruitt, for example. Do we view Bonner as a starter? Your thoughts?
Again, I just have trouble projecting it. And it's not to say he's not a starter. Certainly, I think they're bringing him in to compete to start. He's not a free agent where, he's definitely the starter, right? He started at NC State as a redshirt freshman this past year. He was a backup, wasn't going to play much. And then the middle linebacker gets hurt with 7 games left in the season, and they moved Bonner from outside linebacker to middle linebacker. And he did pretty well. He did pretty well. But again, 2 years ago, he's a 3-star recruit, right? Why is he a 3-star recruit? Because he's not the fastest, biggest, strongest linebacker out there. Now, does that mean he's not a great linebacker? No, but we have to see it, right? He had a good year at NC State, not a great year, but he was a redshirt freshman. So the idea is, and this is what Mario does, you can sort of get guys a little bit cheaper, right? When they're not full-time stars, when there are question marks about them. And that's what Mario's done this portal cycle to a great extent. What do they have, like 15, 16 guys so far? I'd say they spent a lot of money on, I can't even think outside of Beck, who have they spent a fortune on. I think they're sort of spreading the money out, which is okay because Mario's big on depth and competition. The problem comes in when all the competition's the same level, right? Because they don't make each other better in that situation. For those of us that have played sports, so Gary, I'm not going to talk to you, but those of you out there that have played sports, like
I
me,
played sports,
a great athlete like me,
but I played sports.
What makes you a better player is when you have somebody better than you. You need to see what that looks like. If you have everybody on the same level, the same talented level of depth, none of them are making each other better. And then Mario's whole theory of competition makes everyone great doesn't ring true. You need to see great players, how they work, how they study, what they do in certain situations to make themselves great on the field, off the field, whatever it may be, how they take coaching, how they take criticism, all those things. If you're just at a middle level in the entire team, then no one is going to be reaching that higher level, which is why I'm a big fan of getting free agents, older free agents, not wasting your time on depth guys, depth fillers that Gary loves, right? Get the free agents who show the guys, damn, I suck. Look how good this freaking guy is. I'm never going to play. I better get better. Instead of, oh, I'm as good as that guy. We'll compete in the fall and we'll see who wins the job. And they're just both average. That's what bothers me. And that's what Bonner right now to me is. He has to prove me wrong. Every transfer Mario's taken this cycle, like last cycle, there was more free agents. Okay. This cycle, these guys outside of probably Beck have to prove me wrong. And maybe I'm forgetting somebody. He's taken 1 million people. But like I haven't been wowed by anybody except the Beck pickup right now. I love Beck. I think he's going to be great. But he obviously had the 12 interceptions last year. He was frustrated by a lot of receiver drops, so that's not all on him. Has to learn the new system, the UCL. He has to, sort of be off of that, and we have to see him mesh with a bunch of receivers who maybe are great and maybe you're average and maybe you're bad. Like, we don't know yet because, the guys they took in the portal haven't had huge numbers, and the guys who are here were backups last year because Mario played Sam Brown and these other guys, and the JoJo Traders of the world didn't get a lot of reps. So there's a lot of mystery on offense to me right now. And will Kamal Bonner start? I mean, if I'm guessing right now, I think Mario signed him to start him. And I think it's very frustrating for the guys that Mario recruited and developed. I would be so frustrated right now if I'm working my ass off and my name's Raul Aguirre. If I'm working my ass off and I'm supposed to be so great and everyone's saying how great I'm going to be and my name's Bobby Pruitt.
Excuse me. Wait a minute. You got to be good enough, Matt. Like, the onus is on the players to become good enough. If Raul Aguirre
the players get
it up and was God's gift to linebacker, they wouldn't go get Kamal Bonner in the transfer portal.
You're missing the whole point. They didn't sign. If they signed a free agent, that's different. They signed a guy who, to me, is at these guys' level. He was a backup who just happened to play because someone got hurt.
And if he's better than what you have, that tells you all you need to know.
Why did they don't have a depth problem number, by the way. It's a 4-2-5 scheme. So why do they think that Mario brought him in? To me, it's saying, I just watched Raul Aguirre in the spring. I watched Pruitt in the spring. I watched Chase Smith in the spring. They're not good enough. Let's just bring in a guy who's sort of like them, and he'll probably start. Like, that's what I'm seeing.
They're bringing in the best guy they could get.
Right.
And they're increasing the competition in the room.
The message is,
and whoever the best guy is will play.
The message is, we are so average at linebacker, we'll just take anybody at this point and they'll start. Like, that's the message I see.
The message is, we just brought in more competition for you guys, and the best man's going to play.
You're literally missing everything I already said.
You can't manufacture, Jonathan Vilma. You can't manufacture Ray Lewis. You can't manufacture Dan Morgan.
You can't know how NIL works.
Reappear in the transfer portal and go get them. You got to go get the best guy you can get.
What are you talking about? If they had the money, they could get whoever they wanted. They don't have the desire to overpay for players. So of course they can get Jonathan Vilma.
Did you see Jonathan Vilma in the transfer portal?
That's literally the system. What are you talking about?
You tell me you saw Jonathan Vilma in the transfer portal and that they whiffed on him.
Of course you can get Jonathan Vilma.
You go ahead and tell me that.
Of course. If I have $10 million, I could say, hey, Jonathan, come to, through the third party. We got $3 million waiting for you. You can get anybody you want. You can get the top linebacker in the country right now. If he's a senior, he can still go in the portal. Reach out, back channels to his agent. We got $3 million waiting for him. Tell him to transfer, and he comes here. That's literally the system we're in. I don't know what you're talking about.
There were limited impact players in the transfer portal this spring
because Miami doesn't want to spend that money on guys they think don't deserve it. They have a budget.
There. It's not like they were saying, "Hey, pay me $2 million."
Why aren't they there? Do you know why they're not there?
Because nobody wants to pay them $2 million.
Correct.
They have more value to the school they're at. Yeah,
so here's the thing, and I said this last show. To get someone to transfer, you have to overpay because they already know the system where they're at. They already are comfortable being really good there because obviously they had a great year the year before. That's why they're free agents. So it's a leap of faith for them to leave to a new system, a new scheme, new teammates. So you have to overpay, and Mario won't overpay, which is okay. But that's why. So let's not make some big thing. Oh, there's no one in the portal. We can't get anybody because there's no one there. That's just not true. Don't say that. They don't want to pay to get the guys they need to get. And they don't want to overpay, I should say, for the guys that they could get. That's all. They just don't want to overpay.
All right.
It's like going out for a hamburger and paying $80. You don't need to do that. You can get a $14 hamburger and you're full. He's getting the $14 hamburger, and maybe it's okay. We don't know yet. We'll find out this season.
All right, next subject. Okay, does Miami have enough at defensive tackle? I say no. I'm looking at a rotation of David Blade, Justin Scott, Ahmad Moten. I don't believe that is close to good enough. I believe that because they fortified other positions, that defensive tackle is now possibly, if it's not linebacker, the weakest position on the team in terms of depth, numbers, and a standout performer, a guy that changes a ball game. There's no Vince Wilfork. There's no Warren Sapp. There's nothing even close to that. There's not a Damian Lewis who's coaching these guys now. So they're going to have to get by, and they're probably going to get by, Matt, by playing Mesidor and Bain on the inside sometimes, particularly in passing situations. that's just going to be the byproduct of where they are right now. Your thoughts on the defensive tackle situation?
Yeah, that's what's so frustrating. Again, we'll use the baseball analogy, right? Your players have to just want to win and do what's best for the team. Defensive tackle, as we sit here now, if Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor insist on only playing end and continue to drop weight so they can stay at end when they really probably belong at tackle, certainly Bain does eventually, that's a disservice to the team, because the way we're set up right now at Miami, they have really good ends. I mean, really good. Armando Blunt, who's a former 5-star, like, he's ready to be a starter. He would start at many, many, many programs.
He's another one that may have to play some inside.
Armando Blunt's really good.
Yeah.
Cole McConaughey, a guy who missed the spring, people are sleeping on him. He is an outstanding third down pass rusher. He will get sacks, okay? He will be a big part of this defensive line this year, in my opinion. Malik Bryant, who was at linebacker, and also a great pass rushing defensive end. So on third downs, automatically, you got to move both those guys inside, period. Like, I don't care. If it's third down or second and long, Bain and Mesidor should be inside every single freaking time. And if they don't like it, I don't know how you convince them to do it. But, like, Akeem Mesidor had no interest last year in playing tackle, and it hurt the team. And these guys have to get this out of their head for their own benefit. They think NFL teams don't see that. I get it. Nobody wants to play defensive tackle when they play defensive end. It's a lot more fun to play defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, your heart has to be there.
Then have 350-pound guards and a 300-pound center diving at your knees every play. Okay, I get it. But that's what has to happen with the roster I see right now. And if that doesn't happen, and if Heatherman can't convince them with his crazy eyes that they better frickin' play inside and like it and do really well there, then the run defense is going to really have problems, because there's going to be defensive tackle depth issues. They're not going to have the rotation talent they need at defensive tackle. Like, that's just a fact, because David Blay is undersized, didn't look good in the spring. Now you got Justin Scott, who I think is going to be great, okay? But that's one guy, and he has virtually no experience, because like Mario does, these guys don't play as freshmen, because you got to bring in C.J. Clark and you got to bring in Simeon Barrow and these other average defensive tackles last year to take his reps. Even Marley Cook had more reps last year than Justin Scott. And then you got Ahmad Moten, who I think is very undervalued, but that's because he's not flashy, right?
And he's hurt all the time.
Good run stopper, okay at getting after the QB, but not great at anything.
And he's hurt all the time. He gets hurt all the time.
Well, and he's good at everything, not great.
Well, and he gets hurt. He gets hurt.
Yeah, so bottom line is their run defense might be the issue this year. Last year it was pass defense, and that would be such a shame because, you know, Mesidor and Bain they're cutting weight like crazy. They're like high school wrestlers sitting in the sauna and not eating because they want to play defensive end. And instead of just like listening to their bodies and their coaches, who I believe want them to play inside and outside as the coaches want per matchup, right? Depending what it is, who they're playing. And it's just like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It doesn't hurt them in the NFL to be big and strong and fast. And maybe they're concerned they're going to be like a tweener, you know, like what happened with Chickalo or whatever. Like maybe there'll be an end tackle and NFL teams will be like, well, he's not really an end and he's not really a tackle. But for them to pick end when clearly their bodies are both growing into tackles doesn't make sense to me.
All right. People asked a lot about new facilities. They are moving dirt at the site where the indoor practice facility is going to get expanded. It's not something that's going to be a couple months project. What they're doing is they're building the extension first. Then they will connect it to the existing indoor. They don't want it to disrupt the season preparations in the summer and in the fall. But yes, the facilities enhancements for football have begun. And step one is extending the indoor practice facility 35 yards. And the weight room as well is going to get bigger. So that's in motion for those that were asking about that. Should Elijah Lofton, this is a good one. I was intrigued by this one. Should Elijah Lofton get fed the football the way Xavier Restrepo was fed the football? Should Elijah Lofton have Restrepo-like numbers when we get to November and the season is over? I don't see that as reality, Matt. You know, this guy might be the best pound per pound football player on this team, but he's a scheme guy. He's a guy that you're going to utilize in different ways, try to get good matchups with him. I don't see him getting fed footballs the way Restrepo did and busting out of Restrepo's records, for example. Your thoughts?
I'm hoping what we see from this year's offense is a lot of ingenuity where it's not just targeting one or two guys most of the time. This is one of those years, and especially with Carson Beck, who is a veteran, right? Who knows.
Mm-hmm.
Carson Beck, I want to say that his running backs at Georgia in 2023 had maybe 60 catches, and they had Brock Bowers, right, a tight end who had a lot of catches, and they had McConkey who had a lot of catches. Like, they spread the ball out when that Georgia offense was great in 2023. And I'm hoping that Shannon Dawson can sort of reinvigorate that, because what concerns me about Shannon Dawson's offense a little bit is the last 4 years, right? Because the 2 years at Houston, and prior to that, he was a position coach again. So the last 4 years he was a coordinator. It's been the slot receiver, Tank Dell for 2 years and Xavier Restrepo for 2 years. And that's it. Like, that's the go-to. And then, take some shots here and there. But the primary focus of the offense has always been the slot guy. So I could see why somebody's asking, will it be Lofton? Because, you can line him up in the slot with a receiver on the other side or whatever it may be. But I think he has to progress beyond that, right? Just like Lance Guidry, teams figured out his defense last year, right? His first year at Miami, his defense was successful. One team figures it out. There's a weakness in the secondary, they attack, and he had no answer for it, right? And if Miami doesn't have a great slot receiver this year, not that they won't, but if they don't, right, and if teams can take away that slot, is the Shannon Dawson offense now built to be a different kind of offense? A more of a pro-style offense that's going to just move the ball all over the field and extend the plays vertically and horizontally, right? Attack down the field, middle of the field, do everything with all different kinds of personnel. Sort of think like the Rhett Lashley offense, right? Where, not that it's going to be that spread, but where you're essentially getting players with the ball in space and making plays to make that happen, right? So he needs to be able to do that this year, right? Because if a team can do to Shannon Dawson what they did to Lance Guidry, if they can stop that first, slot receiver read that these quarterbacks tend to go to in his offenses over the last 4 years, then what happens, right? Does Carson Beck again fall into that thing last year where he was just pressing and throwing interceptions, led the SEC in interceptions, right? That's what needs to be avoided. So this is a huge year for Shannon Dawson. Was last year Shannon Dawson's number one ranked offense in the country or Cam Ward's number one ranked offense in the country? We're going to find out this year, because I think he has a great quarterback, but the personnel is so different, and they've lost all those receivers. And even
receivers who weren't good enough at the end of the day to get drafted, by the way, which I thought was amazing. Like,
the NFL draft has nothing to do with great college players. People always get hung up on that. Xavier Restrepo was a great college receiver, elite college receiver. It has nothing to do with where he was drafted. Now, generally speaking, if you're a defensive lineman, offensive lineman, or linebacker, or running back for that matter, okay, then I think your NFL draft grade reflects your college grade. But some of these skill guys, little tiny 5'8" guys that are 170 pounds in college that are amazing, the NFL doesn't want them. It doesn't mean they're not amazing, elite college players. That's why it makes me crazy when people say he wasn't drafted. He was terrible. No, Charleston Rambo was great. So what if he was undrafted? Xavier Restrepo was great. So what if he was undrafted? Like, different positions in college, that size set, skill set, strength set doesn't mesh with what NFL teams want a lot of times. It has nothing to do with anything. And that's why it makes me crazy, Gary, when you say this guy and that guy wasn't drafted. So what are we doing here? With linemen, I agree. Linebackers, I agree. Running backs, I agree. That's about it.
Matt, nice try. But you and I just went through an exercise, and this will be showing up on the website, where we ranked the players on this football team. Okay. And think about where we were when we finished that process and how thin it is at the top in terms of great players. Okay. That's what makes the difference between winning 8 games and winning 11 games.
I think the NFL, I agree with that, but I think
having different making players, guys that are good enough to get drafted, guys that can change games. That's where Miami is falling short year after year after year. That's what needs to ultimately change for the Canes to take the next hurdle up. So yeah, great stories, Charleston Rambo. Great story, Xavier Restrepo. Jacoby George. All right, you had a decent career other than the dozen times that you just totally became selfish and destroyed your team, quite frankly. And at the end of the day, might have cost them the Syracuse game. I'll tone it down a little bit. Last time I said he cost them the Syracuse game, I had a lot of people up in arms that were really bothered by that. He doesn't get that penalty. They score. They probably win the game. That's my viewpoint. But the bottom line is none of those guys were good enough to get drafted. Who's good enough now? We'll start to find out. Is JoJo Trader a cut above Jacoby George? Is Malachi Toney a better NFL prospect than Xavier Restrepo? Things like that. We're going to find those out in the seasons to come. But right now, I do think that Miami's a little bit lacking in that department, and it's one of the deficiencies in the program, lack of top shelf end talent that changes games. And defensive tackle, like I said, I feel like they need more there, and maybe linebacker too. And then we'll see how the safeties are in the fall. And if you think I'm getting to the fact that there's still a lot of question marks as this team moves into the summer and the fall, there are, unfortunately, which leads me to my next topic, Matt Shodell, that we are hit with more than anything. People want us to be soothsayers, the great fortune tellers, even though the season doesn't start for 6 months. What will the team's record be next fall? I said it's very impossible to predict this right now. Carson Beck's still on the rehab. We don't know how good he's going to be by the fall. Is he going to be back to 100%? Is he going to be the 2023 Carson Beck? How's he going to bond with this new set of offensive players that he's working with that he hasn't worked with yet? So many variables that will determine what this team's record is next year. I'm not ready to do it. Are you?
I'm standing by my prediction. I don't care how early or late it is. I said 2 years ago that this would be Mario's first playoff year this coming season. So I'm going to stick by it. I didn't see it happening 2 years ago. I didn't see it happening last year. I said this year playoffs, next year competing for a national title. And if he can't do that, I don't know how many more years he needs. I mean, how many isn't 4 years of Mario recruiting and development enough to have a playoff team at that point? So that's why
it's supposed to be, and he unquestionably has been able to improve the program quite a bit. But I still think that they are not getting enough of the top end players, and that's because of how expensive that they've become, and they get spread around. Nobody can pay for all of them, and they keep increasing budgets and increasing budgets and increasing budgets. And recruiting evaluation is a big part of that too, and that's an area that I think has been deficient since Mario got here and can be better. So
you're missing a little piece there, but all right.
Well, I think he's doing a good job. I don't think he has yet been able to get it to what you're talking about.
I mean, the piece that I think you're missing, which is so important, is it's an NFL system, right? Except everyone's a free agent every single year, basically. The way NFL teams meet their salary caps is with rookie contracts, right? The big money for a rookie, unless you're a top pick, is in your second contract, right? In, what is it, the first 3 years, so the fourth year, whatever it is. That's when you get big money. And yeah, college football needs to have some sort of reform, but the current system, the way it is, you need to have a lot of rookie contracts and not a lot of transfer portal guys that you're already paying money to in their second contracts, right? Which they're doing, right? Even if you're paying 300, 400 grand for a receiver who's not great, like a Marion, whatever it is, you can get a 3 or 4 star receiver for half that, because they're going to be freshmen, they could leave and whatever it is. So the key to me in the system, which Mario is missing this piece, is getting those guys and having them start as redshirt freshmen or even true freshmen, and they're not hurting your budget at all, and they're producing. Like, that's the secret sauce to the system, is to finding rookie contract guys who perform at a very high level. And the rookie contract isn't 3 years, it's 1 to 2 years, right? Because you have a great year, now you're worth a fortune, you either leave or you pay up. It's one or the other. But they need to get those bargain basement guys instead of bringing in these retreads in the portal that you're paying $100,000 plus to every single one of them, that they're just average or what you already have just with experience. Like, that's the part that I really wish Mario would have attacked a little bit differently than how he has, instead of just saying, let's just get guys for competition. Because Mario is so hung up on, we need competition, depth, instead of, we need a great guy. right? Whether
Yeah,
it's a
no,
freshman or a senior. We need a great guy,
there's
and he's missing
different
that
things,
piece.
Matt. If you don't have the great guys, you need the competition. If you're playing with good college football players, you need them motivated to the max. You need them incentivized to develop. And the way you do that is with competition at every position. That's what they're striving for. But as far as the record, I'm punting right now. Matt says they'll make the playoffs. I'll weigh in more as we get closer to the season.
Well, I predicted 10-win regular season, okay, 10-2, and then I hope it works out after that, because if they lose one game in the ACC, let's say, right, and one non-conference, what I think is going to happen, I think is that my prediction, right? Now you're in the ACC title game, and I hate the ACC title game. I really do. I hate all the conference title games. Because I know they say they're not going to punish a loser of an ACC title game, but at the end of the day, if Miami goes from 2 losses and in the playoffs before they have to play that title game and lose in that title game and have a 3rd loss, they're going to be on that cusp again of getting cut out. And I don't understand how they don't get rid of the title games at this point. It's just you don't want to be playing in the title game unless you have 4 losses and somehow make it. 3 non-conference losses, 1 conference loss, and that's your one chance to upset someone in the ACC title game and go to the playoffs. To me, get rid of the freaking conference title games. It's just bad news. It's just going to be a bad thing for teams that make it. I wish they would just disband the whole freaking conference title games and do an extra round of the playoffs or something. It's so bad. There's going
to be changes. Did you see Donald Trump spoke at Alabama's graduation, and Nick Saban introduced them, and they apparently had a conversation about NIL. And Trump's looking at executive orders to basically demand that people within the government spend more time looking into this NIL problem and the impacts that it's having in college football. And Tommy Tuberville, the coach who's a senator now, is a big part of that. And Nick Saban's getting involved. And these people know that this can't continue like this, that it's ruining the college game. So there's going to be some changes down the road. What they are, we don't know. Could they include conference title games as part of reform? You never know. All has to be on the table for discussion. All right, Matt, don't want to get off on a tangent here. Our final topic for today, is Clemson still the team to beat in the ACC?
Yes, clearly. I mean, yeah, every story you read, I don't cover Clemson, okay? I cover Miami, but I read, obviously, what other people write, and everyone seems to think that Clemson is just stacked, that Cade Klubnik is, is the Manning of the ACC. I actually like that, because that's something that, knowing Mario, he will really be able to hopefully bring this team together, because some teams you need an enemy. You need a common enemy, especially when you're so disparate. You can look it up, Gary. It's not desperate. It's disparate. When you're so disparate and you have all these pieces coming from the portal and from this and from that and all these new freshmen, and it's got to come together in some form or fashion in the locker room. It just doesn't work if you just have a bunch of pieces pulling in the wrong directions, right? Or tugging the wrong ways. And that's great that people seem to think that, nobody can beat Clemson. Clemson's going to be the class of the ACC. They're going to be a national power this year, whatever it may be. That's going to rub a lot of Miami Hurricanes the wrong way, because this is a team that was just shorted last year, right? You win 10 games, you don't make the playoffs by being behind Alabama. But I mean, look, Alabama didn't make it either. But when that final poll came out before the final poll, Miami was already out of it because they said Alabama with 1 more loss is better than Miami, right? So now, more disrespect. The more disrespect there is, I hope Mario changes his mantra of how you do anything is how you do everything to how you hate everybody is how they hate us, because they hate Miami. Think about, we obviously love Miami, but think about how you hate somebody else or a team or a movie, whatever you hate. That's how everyone is hating on Miami forever. And at some point, when you get pounded down like that time and time again, there needs to be a leader like Mario Cristobal, who steps up and clearly enunciates to this team of disparate parts that nobody thinks you will do this. They've already disrespected you last year. Now we're all here together, and if you guys do not figure this out, and they need leaders on this team big time. I know a bunch of guys on the team that are coming back personally, and I know their personalities. And I don't see that alpha that Mario talks about. I think for some reason, my kids keep telling me beta or something else is now better than alpha. I don't know. Whatever it is, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, whatever the hell it is, I don't see it. And Mario needs to get these guys this summer on some sort of one of these, trust camping missions where they jump out of trees and have to catch each other or whatever the hell it is. Just put them in the freaking wilderness like Yellow Jackets, okay? And let them just live for a week with a conch blowing to have a meeting and try to catch wild pigs or something to cook them up for dinner and bring them together, okay? And make this a real unit, not a team, a unit, okay? An elite pig-killing unit that will take on the world because that's what they need.
All right. Listen, we keep trying to get rid of those guys at Clemson. Everybody would love to see them go away. They're not going away. They used to shy away from the transfer portal. I think they took 3 or 4 guys this spring, a handful, but that's more than they took in the past. But the fact that they were willing to go in the portal and only took a couple guys tells you they feel pretty good about their football team. And are they the team to beat in the ACC?
Well, they always do that, by the way. Dabo's always done that, but yeah.
Yeah, but they probably are still pretty damn good. And then they probably are the team to beat in the ACC. All right, well, that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. Hope you enjoyed this little dive into all the topics that are in the minds of the fans. If you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, head on over to our site. Please become a member. Your subscriptions allow us to do what we do every single day to try to make you guys the most knowledgeable fans in America. Really important that you become a subscriber to CaneSport.com, and you can interact with all the fans that, for example, gave me those questions over the weekend. You can interact with them every single day on the message board. We had a great community of fans. You will not be sorry if you become a subscriber to CaneSport. And beyond that, for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and we will see you next time.